Well, welcome to you all to this special talk within our French-Argentinian Game Jam. Today is the last day of our Game Jam. It's been a hectic week. And it is our great pleasure to enjoy a moment with two great experts in their field to talk about public policies for video games in France and Argentina. Public policies for video games is a tackling subject in both countries, and we're thrilled to get an update on the development of the industry, its creative impact, its audiences, and perspectives for the future. We will learn what role public policies can play in the video game industry in Argentina and France, and which connections could be created or strengthened between our countries in this field. The French Embassy in Argentina and the French-Argentinian Game Jam, produced by Fundar, is very happy to welcome Lucrecia Cardozo from Argentina and Pauline Augrain from France. Pauline Augrain is the Digital Department's Deputy Head at the CNC, the French Institute for Cinema. This digital department is in charge of all the fundings dedicated to digital projects in every sector of the audiovisual industry. Its action spans from creation to diffusion and technological innovation. That is why the digital department is an active partner for video games, virtual reality, digital visual effects, animation, technical industries, as well as VOD editors. Pauline has been previously in charge of the digital creation department at the same CNC. This department is sought as a special space for digital culture artistic expression, which encompasses fundings for video games, digital arts, and immersive works of art. She studied at Sciences Po in Paris. Lucrecia Cardozo also studied political science at the University of Buenos Aires and also has a long career in the Argentinian Institute for Cinema and Audiovisual Arts. She is today the Secretary for Cultural Development at the Ministry of Culture of Argentina under the direct authority of its minister, Tristan Bauer. During her career, she worked at the cabinet for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2003, and then went a long way into the INCA. She was first director for federal action, and then vice president and president of the institute in 2014-2015. She has also been active within the academic field, and she is the co-editor of the book Políticas y Producción Audiovisual en la Era Digital en América Latina, which is a synthesis of a long-running academic study on the sector in different countries in the area. So both women are experts in that field, especially in industrial and cultural economy, especially at video games for Pauline and digital creation. Lucrecia went through the audiovisual industry and is now in charge of the cultural development at the ministry and is particularly keen on the developing laws and tools for the industrial and creative industry in Argentina. That is why we will go through a round of questions around the industry to have a panorama of what is at stake in France and Argentina, what can public policy do, and then what links can be strengthened between our countries on an international level. So we can go to the first row of questions, and that will be my pleasure to let Lucrecia answer the three first questions. Where is the video game industry at in Argentina? Who are the actors and audiences? And what are the perspectives of development of the sector?
Thank you, Rémi. First, I want to say thanks to Rémi and congratulate for the initiative of this activity. Also, it's an honor to share with Pauline this talk and say thanks also to Pablo and Bernardo for this initiative. The first question was what is the video game industry in Argentina? I prefer French, I love French, but it's not enough good in me. But next time, Pauline, we will do this in French.
Okay.
It's a challenge for us, for me. In the format development of video game in Argentina as an industry is a consolidated sector of cultural industry began approximately 20 years ago. During its first 15 years, as consolidated service export model. both in the different disciplines. They are part of the development and in the different process and application, such as programming, the process of conceptual creation, the animation of a character, or the use of video game in learning space. In the last 10 years, the sector has consolidated in the creation of intellectual property, giving room for identity expression and industrial exploration. Today, the sector has a diverse development in both the creation and commercialization of services and products. This context presents us with an auspicious and challenging scenario for the projection and consolidation of this young cultural industry, which is the first choice of more and more people all over the world. In the second question, the video game sector is a cultural industry that includes multiple disciplines. This transdisciplinary composition is strategic in terms of innovation, technology transfer, and sustainable growth. In Argentina, the development of video game is conformed by formal and informal institutions and community of promotion, diffusion, transmission, and instrumentation. As an incipient cultural industry and with a sustained growing development, it is composed approximately 200 formal and informal studios and of at least 20 organized and consolidated communities of students and professionals with an interest in development. We have some number here, around 142 studios in 11 provinces all over the country. That the source is our Cultural Information System of Argentina, CINCA. The creation of the network of video game developed communities made up of 17 communities from all over the country. Rio Grande on the south, Patagonia, just in the end of the world. Río Negro, Neuquén, Mendoza, San Juan, La Rioja, Entre Ríos, Bahía Blanca, Mar del Plata, La Plata, Córdoba. We are talking about big city, but also it's a very interesting the federalization of the industry of video games in Argentina. Tucumán, Misiones, Formosa, Salta, and Jujuy. And they are 3 communities identified by other interests like game rev, action dev, and PANA. The source of this is Fundab, and we think we have around 2,000 professionals in the activity. The source in this case is ADVA, the Association of Video Game Developers. And the third question about the perspective of the development of video game, we see this as a very positive if we take into the account the incorporation of professionals from other sectors of the cultural industry, like audiovisual, cinema. We are now diversification. We are living a diversification and a multi-language interaction between production for exportation, like series of Netflix with using the gamification for strategies of publicity or to finally reach to new publics. We see this in the last 2 or 3 years. It's a very interesting point to develop. There is a great demand of the sector, but the biggest shortcoming is the lack of enthusiasm and professionals that produce. In this sense, not only the dissemination and awareness of video games as an industry is important, but also working closely with the different educational institutions. The Game Jam formal event is really important in order to generate video game developed teams, and they later consolidate themselves as professional studios. Sorry, I read because I feel comfortable reading, but we are now seeing exponential growth of the digital sector. We all over the world because of the awareness of pandemic, but we think that this is the only cultural industry in Argentina that has grown during the pandemic was video games. The 90% of the enterprise are thinking on create new shops for next year.
Yes, and this is exactly the same situation in France, actually worldwide, I think. It's a global trend, obviously. But, you know, we have in France a very strong, very dynamic video games market. I mean, in terms of sales, with something like 10% growth per year. Last year, the global turnover reached 4.8 billion euros, which is quite huge. It's 5% of the international market. And we already know that in 2020, with the COVID crisis, with the 2 lockdowns we've been through, under these very, very special circumstances, the global revenues should, related to games sales, should increase by 20, even 30% in 1 year, which is phenomenal, clearly phenomenal. So yes, in a way, this crisis can be an opportunity for the digital sector, and especially for this cultural field. I totally agree. What we have noticed for 10 years, one of the biggest changes in society we've noticed is that every generation, every age group is now playing video games. So it's really interesting because both men and women, the youngest and the oldest, they all play different types of games, console games, I mean traditional games, console games, computer games, multiplayer games, but also mobile games. So we can see that video games is now much more inclusive in a way. It's just interactive content. We have a lot of different approaches, a lot of different forms, art forms. And I do think it's also really, really interesting to stress this point. And also, we know that 1 out of 2 children play every day, which is really something we need as a cultural institution. Take into account, you know, be really aware of this, because it means that we are, in a way, responsible for the contents they can play, watch, and so on. So it's also one of the reasons why we need to be involved, I mean, in this field, in this industry. In terms of industry, I mean, does this French video games industry take advantage of this huge market? That's a real question. And I have to say that things are getting better and better, because 15 years ago, it was not the case, not at all. This industry was facing a very big economic crisis, very big crisis with, you know, the explosion of the internet bubble, jobs, a lot of jobs were destroyed at that time. A lot of young French talents left the country, went to North America, mostly in Canada, and so on. So the situation was really harsh, really critical. And that's the reason why the French government decided to help this industry 15 years ago. And now we have a lot of very positive signals. Like, for instance, we can count 1,000 companies related to the video games industry, 1,000 companies, and with a majority of development studios. So this is positive because it means that we have a production capacity which is growing and growing. So it's a really good signal. It represents 12,000 jobs, 12,000. So it's very high figure in a way. And we need to say that these jobs are highly skilled jobs, and also in general permanent contracts. So, you know, these jobs create economic value, really. So it's really positive. And the last thing is that we notice that the global turnover of the companies, of the industry, reached 5.5 billion euros, which is higher than the size of the local market, which is maybe the signal that our companies manage to work internationally, to work on the global market. And it's also something which is totally obvious when you produce video games. You produce video games for a global market, not for your local market. So I would say that our strength in general now today in 2020 in France is maybe the first thing. I didn't mention it, but it's Ubisoft. As you know, Ubisoft is a major worldwide leader, one of the first independent publishers in the world. And Ubisoft was born in France 30 years ago. It's still something like 3,500 jobs in France, 5 different development studios. So it's a very big, position in France. It's like a locomotive for the other companies. So Ubisoft is very stimulating in a way. The second key element, I think, is our creative schools. Our schools are really internationally acclaimed in a way for the quality of their training, for the quality of their teaching. And we have these young talents who graduate from these schools. They don't really leave the country anymore, so it's also a good signal. Some do, I mean, it's normal. It's also a good thing to work in general in the US or in Canada. But then they come back, and it's also, a very big challenge to be attractive for these young talents. And I already mentioned it, but we have these development studios, so it means creative studios, production capacity, which is really, really important to keep producing more and more games, creative games, new intellectual properties, and so on. So I would say that the situation is globally very, very positive. We still need to work on maybe 2 things. The first one is how we can strengthen our publishers, because the publishing in France is quite weak in a way. Our policy is totally dedicated to the producers, to the development studios, not the publishers. And maybe it's more and more a problem, actually. And the second thing, totally different, is to keep working on the artistic challenge. I mean, video games as an art form, as artworks, pieces of artworks. I really believe that the interactive creation in general is really, really interesting and stimulated, because it combines different things, different arts, literature, but also graphic, visual arts, and music. Obviously, it's like the synthesis of all the arts in a way. So I really believe we still need to work on this challenge, but recently we created this new aid dedicated to young creators to help the conception of the new games, and it's really interesting because a lot of projects are artistically very original, with a very high quality. So we think that these creators, these authors, need really to be more recognized in a way.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for the thorough presentation, not only of the ecosystem, of the situation in France, but also taking advance on the second set of questions, because you already said what is the role of public policies in the video game industry in France, and what are the challenges that France is facing in that respect. So that's great, because it it gives me the possibility to ask Lucrecia where the public policies are at in Argentina, in an industry which faces different challenges. As you said, Lucrecia is an incipient industry, whereas in France, we have been we had the first wave in the 90s, 2000, before a sort of brain drain and not a crash down, but there is a second breath of the industry, which the CNC is accompanying. So it's very interesting to know that how is the first wave of the incipient industry in Argentina tackled by public policies.
Thanks, Rémi. I want to mention some actions we are going on now. The Mika is a market of industrial cultural industry in Argentina. This will be the 11th edition, and it has his own audience of people related of cultural activity, but also a great impact in society as a whole. But I was thinking one of the strategic fields we are working on video game and audiovisual is the recently improvement of the economy of knowledge law in Argentina that propose different tax improvement for the software sector, the video game and the audiovisual. We are working in a trans-ministerial desk with the Ministry of Production, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, ENACOM, it's the end who rule all the digital area in Argentina, the Secretary of Medios and Ministry of Culture on one program called Contenidos Argentinos, where are included also the video game development or the video game as a cultural industry. Well, we are talking about the support of events like this, the Game Jam, to encourage international development and co-production. We are working very, very hard in the aspect of internalization of our industrial culture. We are completely convinced that is the solution of many of structural problems in Argentina, to diversify the productive structure, to solve many problems related to the external restriction, we call it. Argentina needs more dollars that they can generate by exportation. So we always are in this situation. We think that cultural industries are an opportunity to internationalization and also to diversification of our productive structure. So in this field, we are working so much with many of different areas in government, because mainly most of the rules of the that we need to achieve, it depends on other areas, not in cultural ministry. So this is a very important work that we are taking on now. And I think that it will be very good results soon. The creation of the organized community of video game in Argentina, it's also a challenge for us. And the ministry support all these events throughout the country, as we are telling with this industry is particularly disconcentrated. We think all cultural industry or income cultural in Argentina, the 60% is in the metropolitan area. It's the city of Buenos Aires and the part of the province around, where are concentrated also mostly the 35% of population. And most of the service that we need to develop this kind of industry. But in the case of video game, it's particularly federalized industry, but we have to go on in this goal, doing more and more increasingly federalization industry. The crossover link with different cultural industry and co-production it's an opportunity also, because we have a long tradition in audiovisual and cinema industry also in Argentina. Argentina co-produced with all the countries of Latin America. This is because we have the Inca, but we also have a permanent public politic for this field. This is that could be a synergia between this tradition. The promotion of video gaming learning space as a channel of expression show us the video game are part of daily culture, as was telling also Pauline. My two kids, 10 years old and 8 years old, are really proof of this situation every day. But they are also using this gamification for learning, for health, for environmental problems. That's a big challenge for the sector. Almost the entertainment industry, that is naturally quite the big part of the sector. And intellectual property changed the paradigm of video game production from service to cultural product, as was mentioned also Pauline before, and has made it possible for local development to find its distinction. But as we tell at the beginning of the talk, in the last 5 years, Argentina has, or the video game sector has achieved this goal also. Well, this is quite the second question, Rémi.
Yeah, because I think we are achieving a nice panorama of the industry in France and Argentina, and also the first inputs of what public policies do in both countries. In Argentina, public policies for video games are incipient. It's based on the economy of knowledge law, but I think some province already had plans for video games. I wanted to know, Lucrecia, if the effort of the Argentine government, the Ministry of Culture today, aims at unifying the framework for video games industry, while also helping this federalization of production and trying to expand its means for internationalization. What the difference I see today between France and Argentina is that the production of IP in France is how to say, is driven by the presence of Ubisoft, which is a strong developer and a strong publisher, and that maybe a difficulty that will arise for accompanying the industry in Argentina is the possibility of having the games published in a large scale. Do you see that as a challenge today?
Yes, well, the recognition of video game as a cultural industry is recently in Argentina. It's 2011, but that has positioned all the sector all over the country, because every jurisdiction has different regulation to impulse industry. So that's why we are seeing today this federalization of the sector. Not only video game, but particularly video games, because of the way they organize the production. No, it's been very important, and it came with the main law, that is the past of the knowledge economy law, that was the software law, that recognized the sector as an industry, and that was a very, very, very huge impulse for growing. Now, this particular law includes other sectors like audiovisual, of course, software and video games. But we are talking now about some tax incentives that we think that will come, or a lot of inversion that we are hoping to. And also many of the OTTs enterprise that are thinking in Argentina to invest, and we think that they will be there, natural relation between the different language or the different cultural industries. But yes, there is a long work to do around this, and it's a big opportunity because this is a constellation of a law, a government that recognize cultural industry as an opportunity, not only the Ministry of Culture, also the Economy Ministry and the Production Ministry and the tax agency and the agency also of investment. And we are all our cameras are sitting in all the commission and desk to promote this.
That might be very, very interesting, Pauline, that you share with us the process France went through to achieve the public policies we have today. That might be a reflection of the process that is going on in Argentina right now.
Well, as I first mentioned, the first reason why the French government decided to help the industry is because of the critical economic situation in the beginning of the century, actually. So these programs, these schemes, was an answer to this crisis, clearly. But then we could be like more offensive in a way and decide to support these companies and these projects for other reasons, because video games is at the crossroad of different things, at the crossroad of digital economy, technological innovation, and also it's a cultural industry. So it became clearer and clearer that this industry creates a lot of values, economic values, technological values, cultural values. So it's really good reason, to support it. And the other reason is the international environment, the international competition in a way, because of North America, again, Canada, mostly Canada, and also UK. They launched their own tax rebate scheme. So these tax credits, especially the Canadian ones, which is a very old tax credit, actually, it was set up in the 90s. So they were very pioneers in this field in a way. So these tax credits are very, very attractive. And so we really need to answer to this situation. And that's the reason why in 2008, so it means 12 years ago, we set up these two main mechanisms to help the industry, which is, the first one is a tax credit. It's a tax credit for video game, which rate was quite recently raised to 30%. So it means that a company that can deduct from their taxes up to 30% of the eligible expenses, and the eligible expenses are the production budget, actually, of a new video game project. So it's really efficient, because it means that if you produce a 1 million euros budget game, you can get 300,000 euros from the state, actually. So it's quite powerful. To give you a general idea, last year we could support 43 projects. 43 new projects got a provisional approval, what we call a provisional approval, representing more than 200 million euros spent in French in France, which is the highest figure ever recorded, actually, which means, it's also a very positive thing, because it means that our production capacity is growing and growing. And we can see that half of these tax credit projects have quite small budgets, under 1 million euros, and 15% have a very big budget, which is higher than 10 million euros. So, and it's not only Ubisoft. We also have other development studios which are not Ubisoft, like Quantic Dream, for instance, Dontnod, Asobo, Arcan Studio, and these studios are more and more able to produce very ambitious games. So it's great, because this tax credit exists because we really want to cover the biggest productions, the most ambitious productions. It's very this thing which is at stake with a tax credit scheme. We also have another program which is totally different, actually. It's a selective fund, a support fund, which allows us to grant subsidies to foster creation and innovation at different stages: concept, pre-production, prototype, and production. And this works differently because it's selective. It means that we rely on a jury of experts. They decide if they want to support the projects or not on the basis of criteria which is more artistic criteria. We can evaluate also the commercial potential, but it's mainly artistic, actually. We can invest with this selective fund up to 4 million euros a year, but our target is totally different. The biggest studio, they don't ask for a selective subsidy. They don't need it, actually. So we can say that independent development studios are clearly the primary beneficiaries of this very specific measure. And we can see each year that a very high proportion of very young studios get this funding for the very first time, actually, which is also something positive, because we want this scheme to be very open to the youngest companies, So these, yes, there is also something which is really important, that in the selective fund requires that the studios keep the intellectual property rights on their games to be sure that they can create values on these new games. That's why the indie games are the first beneficiaries, clearly. To give you an idea, the general investment of these two schemes is around 50 million euros per year, and is more and more important, especially because of the tax credit, which is really dynamic. These schemes are clearly dedicated to new projects, new games, new artistic projects. But I have to say that in addition, we have other programs driven by the public financial institutions like l'IFSIC or BPI France, which is the public investment bank, that can grant equity loans to video games companies to support the structure of the company. And it's also very valuable in a way. So as I said earlier, I really have to say honestly that the global evaluation is positive in terms of job creation, in terms of we give more confidence in the industry, which means that more private and international investments come in the companies. Banks are more and more open to grant loans or things like that. So we manage to these companies can, you know, scale up, these productions can scale up, and it's one of our goals, clearly. We have a positive technological impact because these companies can do more and more research and development work in new technologies like artificial intelligence, like blockchain, like machine learning, user interfaces, VR, AR, and so on. And these technologies are all connected with other industries, so which is also positive. It goes beyond the gaming industry, and also in terms of cultural impact, because of these new original intellectual property, these new IPs that are created. We have also a very important partner in a way, which is Arte, the German-French cultural channel that is now publishing video games. We all support the games they publish. And I mean, it's maybe the signal that now video games are totally compatible with a very demanding editorial policy. So in terms of, you know, cultural challenge, it's also something which is which means a lot for us, really. And that's it. I mentioned earlier this more recent aid we launched last year to help these young creators, these young authors. In a way, we like the author culture, you know, in France. Again, these very young and new projects are very original, so we try to foster it again and again.
Thank you, Pauline, for this very rich presentation of the challenges and the response that the French public policy is trying to give to the situation in France. I think the common feature is the basic scheme of the tax credit and the importance of protecting the biggest enterprises in both countries are shared, and that the recent advances in law in Argentina show that this path is being also walked. But I wanted to ask Lucrecia, what are the next step for the public policies in Argentina? What do you aim at? And in a way, what to be able to go to the third and last question, how connections could be built between France and Argentina, but between Argentina on the world and France on the world, respectively, for the video games industry? Because you said both that protection of IP is very important in different respects, for protecting jobs, for protecting the economy, and also for protecting diversity and cultural values that only studios based in a certain country are able to defend, protect, preserve, and expand with the right publisher together. So I think we already said in the conversation that publishing is a real problem. It is a problem in France. It is a problem in Argentina. So is the international links between public policies that have many features in common, something that can be a path that can be walked to achieve this goal?
Well, first part of the question that was what we were talking after, it was like this achieve the consolidation, the professionalization of the sector, the diversification of the production, for achieve a greater federalization, train and professionalize the existing communities of developers all over the country. This economy of knowledge and the tax rebate and all the impulse to the sector, it's a great moment for us. This 2021, we are hoping that it will be some results next year. But the most interesting part of the question is for me the strategies and action for Argentina and France, I think we have to take advantage of the tradition of co-production, cooperation in other language, in other cultural industries like cinema, audiovisual. We have a really opportunity there. I think that we must share these experiences about new regulation laws of the digital space that Europe have take very the initiative at first. We need to make some space of work and cooperation in this sense. We share experience. I think that this game jam that we are doing now, it's particularly important to link companies, professional, students. We have an opportunity there too. Maybe we must think about some kind of contest that we can do together to make this stronger, this traditional, this cooperation. I was in the Cinema Institute for 8 years, and I saw the grow of the cooperation, of the co-production in audiovisual field. I think that video game is naturally the son or younger brother of this sector, and we have a lot of opportunity there. We need also to plan, formulate, and execute global strategies, taking France, Mexico, maybe, and Spain as a strategic partner, and all the different countries with a predisposition to video game sector and link. We have to make this disciplinary crossover between the sector to research and promote the development of transmedia and IP. We should explore international service market with strategies to integrate them in the value chain. We have an opportunity there also. At least consolidate the identity of Argentinian video game development. I think we must think the space between France and Argentina. We are working so much now with other countries of Latin America, as Colombia, Mexico, that has also public policies active to the sector, and we are talking about being consolidate the space as a production field, not as a market where we can fight for the same inversion, or that we think ourselves as competitive actors. Not at all. We are complementary actors, and think the other big markets that we can insert our countries between this politics of cooperation.
No, I really believe that we need to create new places, actually. I mean, to create the conditions so that people are able to meet up, because what we can notice is that the production video game, that this industry, these productions are very, in general, very localized in a way. I mean, they're not used to developing international collaboration. In general, they produce with their own studio and without any kind of partnerships, actually, at this stage of production. And maybe it's a shame. I think we should, try to stimulate these creative exchanges between both countries. Create new places. It means create maybe exchange programs or things like that. I know that the French Institute tried to launch a new residence, yeah. I don't know the word in English, residence, last year, so that Argentinian and French young creators can do something together, can create new interactive content together, and for like something like 2 weeks. And it was really, really, really interesting. I know very well one of the people who participated, and you know, it's you just need to build a new linked, new relation, maybe inspired by what we do in the audiovisual and cinema field, because in cinema the idea of international cooperation is very important, is something which really exists globally, with one of our programs, for instance, which is Cinéma du Monde. Maybe we can launch a Jeux Vidéo du Monde. I don't know, maybe. Yeah, what do you think?
Yes, sure. We have now in a few days it will start South Window, Ventana Sur, that born as a 2 countries initiative idea. Partnered with the Marché du Film de Cannes, Jérôme Payard and Thierry Fremont, have built a market of Latin America cinema that it didn't exist before. It's a great experience. This initiative, it was at first all dedicated to cinema, but then all technology changed, digitalization changed all the value chain of the sector, and now they are also having some space for development of software and video game. I think that this, especially this cultural industry, needs a own space, that we can take advantage of this experience in other fields, but it has their own potential, their own way to organize the production, and there is also a great opportunity. France and Argentina has a long traditional and relationship between both countries in cultural field especially. So I think it's whatever that we decide to use as a herramienta, now a contest, a space, like this sham to link actor will be always will be written in growing of the sector in both countries.
Yeah, great. So let's create these new spaces.
Absolutely. Do you think, Lucrecia, that the next event, like Mika or some side events, could be the place to emulate the model of Ventana Sur, which is effectively a great model, as you recall, which is how to build a Latin American market with an internationalization imprint that comes in this case from France, and that video games is lacking today, at least in the Ibero-America, because Brazil has a special markets already thriving in that field. But maybe in Ibero-America there is a place to fulfill.
Yes, sure. I think it now the Mika, the market of cultural industry in Argentina, was always presential. Pandemia between the next Mika, it became a virtual experience. We are thinking about doing some mix between presential activities and virtual activities, because it's in March of 2021. But I think that we must fertilize these links between France, Mexico, and Spain, Argentina. We will have a special space for the relationship between these countries, France and Argentina, Mexico and Argentina, Spain and Argentina. But it will be also a challenge to think the geographic space as in the virtual Mika, like a challenge to develop video games. I think it's the most opportunity. We are talking about industrial culture. The Secretary of Cultural Develop has also a visual art, audiovisual, a lot of sector. But we think and we know that video game is an strategic cultural industry for Argentina, and it's also one of the most easily internationalization power, because it has, because what we were talking, the way of organize the production, the way of organize the shop, we must take advantage of our relationship, of our experience between France and Argentina, and take it to the video game fields. I think it's really an opportunity for us.
Well, I think you can count on us at the French Embassy and at the CNC. And Pauline, if you want to comment upon what Lucrecia just said, because this is absolutely, at least for the French Embassy and the Institut Français d'Argentine ici, the goal we try to achieve.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, nothing to add, really. I think it's an opportunity that we can see forward, and that video games is just obvious in the world we live today. Actually, cinema was the big industry in the 20th century. In the 21st century, it's the gaming industry. It goes beyond any doubt, actually. So I really think that we need to build new links, new programs, new sensitivities, culturally speaking, between Argentina and France. I mean, we are totally open to keep talking, discussing the new collaboration opportunities we can have, really.
I think that the great sum up of our conversation, because we couldn't dream better than having projects together after this talk. It's been a rich talk, and thank you very much for your time, for the space offered by the Game Jam that we on Fundav are organizing and that you are part of. You are at the core of it, because CNC and Ministerio de Cultura in Argentina are two strong supports of what we are doing. And we are at your service to keep on moving together and to tie links in this new industry for this next year that we hope will be post-pandemic.
Yeah, hopefully. Many thanks for the initiative. It's great to meet you, Lucrecia, and hope to see you in real life in a few months, in a few years, maybe.
I hope so, Pauline. The same for me. It's a great pleasure to know you, to share this talk, and also congratulate for the Game Jam to Rémi and Bernardo and Pablo. And I hope we can go on these ideas and materialize these ideas soon. And thanks again.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.